It was a quiet Christmas evening when the message dropped. No long build-up, no warning sirens in the media space. Just a blunt, explosive post from President Donald Trump on his Truth Social platform. In a few short lines, Trump announced that the United States had carried out airstrikes on ISIS targets in northwest Nigeria. According to him, the targets were ISIS terrorists who had been viciously killing primarily innocent Christians at levels not seen for decades. The message was dramatic, deliberate, and unmistakably personal. Trump framed the attack not just as a military action, but a moral response to what he described as systematic genocide against Christian minorities. Within minutes, the U.S. Secretary of Defense echoed the message, saying the president had been clear that the killing of innocent Christians must end, and that ISIS found out tonight what that warning meant. That is the announcement, but behind it are deeper questions. How the attack happened, why it happened now, whether it succeeded, and what it could mean for Nigeria's already fragile religious and security balance. One striking detail of Trump's announcement is how sudden the attack appeared to be. There were no prior public threats in the days immediately before Christmas, no evacuation warnings, no visible troop movements reported in advance. According to Trump's own words, the strike came without notice to the ISIS fighters on the ground. That suddenness is not accidental. Modern U.S. counterterrorism doctrine relies heavily on surprise, intelligence-driven targeting, rapid execution, and minimal exposure time. If Trump's claim is accurate, the attack was designed to hit ISIS leadership or camps before they could disperse, hide, or use civilians as shields. Trump described the operation as numerous perfect strikes, language he has used before to signal confidence in both intelligence accuracy and military execution. He emphasized that the attack was carried out in a way only the United States is capable of doing, reinforcing the idea of overwhelming precision rather than prolonged engagement. But was it successful? At this point, success depends largely on Trump's own claims. There has been no independent confirmation yet of the number of ISIS fighters killed, whether senior commanders were eliminated, the exact location struck, the scale of damage to ISIS operational capacity. Trump's statement strongly implies that the targets were hit and that casualties were significant. However, in counterterrorism operations, success is not just measured by explosions, but what happens afterward. Did ISIS lose key leadership? Did its ability to plan attacks weaken? Or did fighters simply melt into surrounding communities? For now, based solely on Trump's declaration, the U.S. considers the operation a success. Whether that success is strategic or only symbolic remains an open question. Trump's justification for the strike was clear and repeated: the targeted killing of Christians in northern Nigeria. Importantly, Trump and U.S. officials made a distinction. They accused Islamic terrorists, not Muslims as a whole. This distinction matters, especially in a country like Nigeria, where Muslims and Christians have lived side by side for generations. According to the U.S. position, radical Islamist groups have used Sharia law as a justification to punish or kill Christians, targeted Christian farmers under the cover of farmer-herder conflicts, kidnapped Christian students from schools, singled out Christian villages for raids and executions. One of the most controversial claims involves Christians being killed for allegedly violating Sharia law, a legal system that does not apply to non-Muslims. U.S. officials have cited cases where Christians were accused of offenses such as blasphemy, alcohol consumption, or moral violations, even though they are not bound by Islamic law. However, it is important to be precise. No official U.S. list publicly naming specific Christian victims executed under Sharia law has been released in Trump's statement, or the Defense Secretary's response. While human rights groups have documented numerous killings and abuses, many victims' names are either withheld for family safety or remain unverified in conflict zones. What the U.S. appears to be responding to is not a single incident, but a pattern. Repeated reports of Christians being disproportionately targeted by jihadist groups, criminal bandits, and extremist militias who blur the line between ideology and organized crime. In Trump's framing, Nigeria has become a place where terrorism, religious extremism, and weak enforcement intersect, creating space for violence against minorities to continue with little consequence. The question now is, will the strike deter ISIS or make things worse? This is where the debate becomes intense. On one side is the deterrence argument. The logic is simple. If ISIS leaders know that the world's most powerful military is watching, tracking, and willing to strike even on Christmas night, they may think twice before continuing targeted attacks on Christians. Fear can disrupt planning. Fear can fracture leadership. Fear can save lives. From this perspective, Trump's strike sends a loud message. Nigeria is no longer a safe distance battlefield. Actions taken in remote forests or villages can trigger consequences from across the Atlantic. On the contrary, critics warn of escalation. Bulama Bukati, speaking on Al Jazeera, has argued that U.S. strikes framed explicitly around protecting Christians could deepen religious divisions. His concern is that extremist groups may use the attack as propaganda, portraying it as proof that Christianity is backed by Western military power and Islam is under attack. Listen to Bukati's line of argument.
And of course, American help with weapons, with equipment, with training to the Nigerian military will help. But the kind of action Donald Trump was suggesting, which shows unilateral intervention in Nigeria, will only escalate matters and is going to be counterproductive. The United States has nasty experiences in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and I don't think they want to repeat that mistake. And therefore, the way forward is to work with the Nigerian government, to work with Nigerians, Muslims, and Christians who are affected by this violence, and to do things in calm ways rather than announcing things on Twitter or doing social media foreign policy.
In such a scenario, ISIS may retaliate with more brutal attacks. Local tensions between Christian and Muslim communities could worsen. Moderate Muslims could be unfairly targeted or radicalized. Violence could spread beyond terrorist groups into communal conflict. This is the danger of symbolic framing. While the intent may be protection, the perception on the ground can be very different. However, the most consequential part of Trump's statement is not what has already happened, but what he threatens next. Trump warned clearly, if the slaughter of Christians does not stop, the strikes will continue. This creates two possible paths. One, if ISIS and affiliated groups scale back attacks, whether out of fear or disruption, the strikes could mark a turning point. Reduced violence would validate Trump's strategy and pressure Nigerian authorities to strengthen local security and justice systems. In this scenario, Christian communities gain breathing space, extremist groups lose momentum, international attention remains focused on prevention rather than retaliation. 2. If attacks persist, Nigeria could become a recurring target of U.S. military action. That raises serious implications. Repeated foreign strikes may undermine Nigeria's sovereignty, civilian casualties could increase, militants may fragment and become harder to track. Nigeria risks becoming a permanent proxy battlefield. Trump's approach is blunt: consequences over diplomacy. Whether that approach saves lives or fuels instability will depend on what happens in the months ahead, not the headlines of one night. This Christmas night strike is more than a military event. It is a message to terrorists, to governments, and to religious communities. Trump has chosen to frame the conflict as a moral emergency, a defense of persecuted Christians, and a line in the sand against radical Islamist violence. Supporters will call it long overdue, critics will call it reckless. What cannot be denied is this: Nigeria now sits at a dangerous crossroads where local violence has drawn global firepower. Whether that firepower extinguishes terror or spreads it remains to be seen. For now, the skies over northwest Nigeria have carried a warning, and the world is watching what happens next.